Good evening, Wildcat hockey fans. Saturday night at the Bob. Final regular season, final home game for Luke L.B. Brown. Starting lineup for the Wildcats tonight: Nicholson under center, Warnick and Kaiser at wing, Neal and Brown on defense. And it looks like Connors between the pipes tonight for the Wildcats. Face-off control by the Wildcats. Neal controls, dumps ahead to Warnick. Brown controls neutral zone. Clears the puck out of play. Nicholson under center. Nicholson controls behind the net. Nicholson to neutral ice. Skates ahead. Nicholson skates in around the net. Looks to center. Hits Brown at point. Brown shot. Blocked by Central. Nicholson controls. Dumps in. Around the boards. Warnick pursues. Central controls. Neal keeps it in. Central clears their zone. Central dumps in. Kaiser controls behind the net to Brown. Brown ahead to Nicholson. Nicholson neutral ice. Nicholson skates in. Races in. Shot. Saves Central. Covered by Central. Line change for the Wildcats. Alvarez and Velan on the ice. Miller at defense. Frizy in at defense. Lee in at wing. Alvarez controls the draw. Lee to Frizy. Offside kicks. Face-off outside the zone. Alvarez under center. Alvarez controls the draw. Miller controls. Miller dumps in. Alvarez chases behind the net. Delayed offsides. Velan on the forecheck. Lee keeps it in. Lee around the boards. Alvarez controls. Alvarez skates in. Shot. Goal, Alvarez! 1-0 Wildcats. Nicholson under center, Warnick and Kaiser on wing, Miller and Frizy on defense. Frizy controls in his own zone. Frizy clears the zone. Central dumps it in, delayed offsides. Miller controls behind his net to Frizy. Frizy back around the net. Warnick along the board. Warnick behind the net. Warnick cross ice to Nicholson. Nicholson clears his own neutral ice. Cross ice to Frizy. Ahead to Wernick. Wernick to Kaiser. Offsides kicks. Line change for the Wildcats. Neal and Brown in on defense. Same forward line. Nicholson under center controls the draw. Brown controls, cross ice to Neal, pass stolen. Brown controls, ahead to Wernick. Wernick to Nicholson. Nicholson advances across the blue line, skates in, shot. Save, deflection central. Puck scores free. Brown keeps it in. Kaiser shot blocked. Loose puck in front of the net, save central. Luke Brown keeps it in. Brown Saunders, Nicholson. Nicholson shot wide. Brown controls, cross ice, pass stolen by Central. Neal pursues. Brown back on defense. Shot, save, covered by Connor. Line change for the Wildcats. Boswick, Dane, Shulkin, and Miller and Frizy. Loose puck in front of the net, controlled by Central in the corner. Lane looks to clear the zone, kept in by Central. Central dumps, shot high wide. Central controls centering pass. Boswick clears the zone. Shulkin clears the zone. Cross ice to Dane. Cross ice to Lang. Central controls. Kept in by Frizy. Frizy shot wide of the net. Shulkin behind the net, loose puck. Central controls along the boards. Central clears the zone. No offsides. Frizy chases. Frizy behind the net. Cross ice to Miller. Miller ahead to Boswick. Miller clears the zone, dumps in. Brown in for Frizy on defense. Central behind the net. Kept in by Brown. Brown skates in, broken up. Central controls neutral ice. Central dumps it in. Brown in pursuit. Line change for the Wildcats. Veland now on the ice with Lee. Veland neutral ice. Veland skates in. Cross ice to Alvarez to Lee. Lee shot, save. Oh, just missed. Veland pursues along the boards. Veland shot, save Central. Lee along the boards battles. Veland keeps it in, there's the zone. Neal controls center ice. Neal ahead to Veland. Veland skates in, looks to center. Finds Lee. Lee broken up. Neal, shot, blocked. Alvarez in the corner. To point to Brown. Brown shot, save Central. Veland along the boards, behind the net to Alvarez. Alvarez centers the Lee to Brown. Brown shot. Goal Brown! LB! Line change for the Wildcats. Wernick, Nicholson, Kaiser. Neal and Brown stay in the defense. Brown controls in his own zone. Cross ice to Kaiser. Kaiser center ice. Broken up by Central. Central advances. Centering pass broken up by Nicholson. Nicholson clears the zone to Kaiser. Kaiser cross ice to Wernick, broken up. Central advances. Nicholson stolen around the net. Stolen by Central. Shot, save, Connor. Frizy and Miller in that defense for the Wildcats. Miller behind the net. Miller along the boards to Kaiser. Bump back in. Behind the net. Nicholson controls. Looks to clear. Ahead to Wernick. Wernick to Nicholson. Wernick cross ice to Frizy. Frizy cross ice to Nicholson. Nicholson dumps. Wernick pursues behind the net. Miller keeps it in. Miller dumps in. Wernick pursues behind the net. Third zone. Icing coming up on Central. Penalty on the Wildcats, Kaiser. Looks like we may have a 2-10 against the Wildcats. Not sure. Kaiser was called for boarding. Alvarez under center. Lee at wing. Frizy and Miller in. Lee along the boards. Center ice. Dumps it in. Central controls. Central advances neutral ice. Shot, save, Connor, behind the net. Miller clears the zone. Central controls neutral ice. Center dumps in. Frizy behind the net. Frizy looks to clear the zone, kept in by Central. Frizy again, looks to clear, kept in by Central. Shot blocked. Shot save, Connor. Alvarez in the corner. Shot Central. Blocked by Lee. Shot again. Save by Connor. Line change for the Wildcats. Neal and Brown on defense. Nicholson and Wernick in. Centering pass, no one home. Wernick ahead, cross ice, Nicholson broken up. Central controls. Central ahead. Brown controls. Brown clears the zone. Central dumps in. Offsides. Icing, excuse me. Nicholson on the center, controlled. Brown dumps in. Central behind the net. Kept in. Nicholson skates in. Shot, miss. Nope, shot. No. Shot wide. Brown controls, neutral ice. Brown dumps in. Behind the net. Wernick pursues along the boards. Central clears the zone. Neal controls. Neal dumps in. Line change coming up for the Kits. Miller and Lee in. Central controls neutral ice. Dealing on the ice. Kits are now full strength. Miller advances. Pass broken up. Central advances into the Kit zone. Skates in. Broken up by Veland. Shot block, Miller. Miller clears the zone. Alvarez and Veland chase. Veland skates in. Veland skates in looking to pass, leaves it to Lee. Lee shot blocked. Lee controls to Veland. Veland, I point to, broken up by Central. Miller in pursuit, breakaway. Counter comes out, stops it. Clears the zone. Veland pursues on forecheck. Central controls. Loose puck behind the net. Central controls in the corner. Center pass broken up by Alvarez. Veland along the boards. Alvarez clears neutral ice. Central cross ice pass. Central passes ahead, broken up by Lee. Lee dumps in, out of play. Line change for the Wildcats. Boswick laying at wing, Shulkin at center, Neal and Brown on defense. Brown controls along the board. Brown controls in his own zone. Brown to Boswick along the boards. Check by Central. Loose puck along the boards. Brown controls behind the net. Ahead to Shulkin. Shulkin advances neutral ice. Skates into Central zone. Shulkin in pursuit along the boards. Central controls. Central clears the zone. Icing on Central coming up. Line change for the Wildcats. Wernick, Nicholson, Lee, Neal, and Brown on the ice. Central controls the draw. Looks to clear. Icing again on Central. Nicholson under center for the Wildcats. Neal at point. Neal to Wernick. Wernick skates in. Shot. Save Central. Lee on the rebound. Brown to keep it in. Central clears the zone. Nicholson controls in his own zone. Nicholson center ice. Skates in. Nicholson controls into the corner. Nicholson behind the net. Loose puck. Neal keeps it in. Neal dumps back into Nicholson. Nicholson to Wernick. Wernick to Nicholson. Central controls behind the net. Wernick on the forecheck. Lee controls along the boards. Lee dumps in. Out of play. Line change for the Wildcats. Veland, Alvarez, Friese, Miller, and Shulkin. Alvarez wins the draw. Friese controls over to Miller. Miller ahead. Shulkin. Central controls. Cross ice. Veland on forecheck. Miller controls. Miller dumps in. Miller keeps it in. Veland battles along the boards. Central controls. Clears the zone. Icing Central. Same five for the Wildcats. Alvarez under center. Veland controls the Shulkin. Stolen by Central. Central along the boards, kept in by Miller. Loose puck behind the net. Central controls. Kept in by Alvarez. Froggy battles along the boards. Shulkin controls with the pass broken up. Alvarez keeps it in. Central clears the zone. Central dumps in. Frizy in the corner. Shot Central blocked. Central controls. Alvarez looks to clear. Central dumps back in. Miller behind the net to Frizy. Frizy controls. Dealing along the boards. Ahead to Alvarez. Central controls. Penalty coming up on the Wildcats. Lee under center for the Wildcats. Neal controls. Neal clears the zone. Crossline Central. Central skates in. Brown controls along the boards, clears the zone. Central plays it behind the net. Lee in pursuit. Bosler controls.
Get out there, let's go!
Neal races to the corner, controls, looks to clear the zone. Central controls neutral ice. Offsides.
Hey, control the puck, boys. Let's go. Plenty of time.
Same four for the Wildcats. Lee under center. Lee controls the draw. Neal controls his own zone. Neal clears the zone. 1 minute 10 left on the Wildcat penalty. Brown controls. Behind the net, Central. Boswick in pursuit. Central controls neutral ice. Nicholson under center, Brown and Wernick and Miller. Central controls. Clears the zone. 40 seconds left on the penalty. Miller behind the net. Miller clears the zone. Wernick ahead. Nicholson controls neutral ice. Nicholson dumps in. Wernick in pursuit in the corner. Loose puck along the boards. Central controls. Nicholson steal. Loose puck along the boards. Central controls. Clears the zone. Brown in pursuit. Brown clears the zone. Full strength for the Wildcats. Veland's now on the ice. Out of play. Lee and Veland at wing, Alvarez under center, Neal and Brown at defense. Neal controls, looks ahead. Alvarez dumps in. Brown controls neutral ice. Brown shot from save, Central. Central plays it. Kept in by Brown. Central clears the zone. Icing, Central. Line change for the Wildcats. Lang, Brown, Shulkin, Bostwick, and Neal. Bostwick controls the Brown. Brown cross ice to Neal. Neal shot, save, Central. Loose puck, Neal keeps it in. Bostwick controls along the board, centering pass, broken up. Loose puck in front of the net. Kept it by Brown. Bostwick in pursuit. Shulkin controls the point. Shulkin cross ice to Brown. Brown had the length, centering pass, no one home. Central clears the zone. Neal controls. Shulkin cross ice to Brown. Brown ahead, broken up to Lang. Brown controls neutral ice. Brown jumps in, line change for the Wildcats. Nicholson now on the ice with Miller. Central. Brown controls. Dumps it on the board. Nicholson advances. Nicholson stops in the corner. Nicholson behind the net. Nicholson centering the lead. Lead shot. Save, Central. Same five for the Wildcats. Miller dumps in. Nicholson behind the net. Nicholson looks to center. Broken up, stolen by Central. Miller keeps it in. Miller dumps it back in. Kept in by Miller. Nicholson dumps into Wernick. Wernick center pass broken up. Central controls. Central clears the zone. Broken up, Miller. Wernick controls ahead to Nicholson. Nicholson behind the net. Centering pass to Lee. Lee goal! Line change for the Wildcats. Brown and Neal at defense. Schulkin under center. Lang and Boswick at wing. Boswick steals the puck behind the net. Stolen back by Central. Lang battles along the boards. Brown's there to assist. Icing on Central. Icing waved off. Neal controls ahead to Schulkin. Neal controls own zone. Cross ice to Brown. Offsides. Same five for the Wildcats. Schulkin under center. Draw one. Brown along the boards, dumps it in. Central clears the zone. Neal controls in his own zone. Circles back around. Stolen by Central. Central skates in. Shot, no. Wildcats clear the zone. Brown cross ice. Broken up by Central. Lee clears the zone. Central dumps in. Neal chases to the corner. Central shot. Save. Counter. Alvarez ahead to Veland. Broken up. Central controls in their own zone. Veland on the forecheck. Neal center ice. Tied up along the boards. Lee now on the ice for the Wildcats. Puck scores free to Central. Stolen by Alvarez. Alvarez advances. Penalty coming up on Central. Wildcats to the power play. Penalty tripping. Central. Line change for the Wildcats. Nicholson, Kaiser, Wernick, Friese, and Miller. Wernick ahead. Shot. Wide. Loose puck in front of the net. Nicholson. Loose puck. Kaiser. Kaiser stick handles. Looks. Wernick to the corner. Kaiser controls. Lose it from Miller. Miller ahead to Wernick. Wernick centering to Kaiser. Stick handles. Broken up by Central. Kept in by Miller. Miller back to Kaiser. Kaiser to Friese. Broken up. Friese shot. Save Central. Wernick behind the net. Nicholson centers the point to Miller. Miller dumps it in. Miller to Wernick. Pass broken up. Check by Wernick. Central clears. No icing. Miller controls behind his net. Leaves it for Nicholson. Poked away by Central. Friese controls center ice. Friese cross ice to Wernick. No icing. Friese behind the net controls. Friese clears the zone. Leaves it for Miller. Miller advances. Broken up by Central. Central advances, neutral ice. Kaiser in pursuit. Central skates in, broken up by Frizy. Miller controls. Miller clears the zone ahead to Wernick. Delayed offsides. Central controls. Brown now on the ice. Brown controls. Brown dumps in. Neal, Veland, Alvarez now on the ice along with Lee. Veland past Stone, center ice, broken up. Central controls. Lee along the boards. Brown controls in the corner. Ahead to Lee, clears the zone. Lee again. Cross-ice broken up. Neal controls. Neal over to Veland. No icing. Kaiser in pursuit. Central controls. Broken up by Neal. Alvarez behind the net. Alvarez to Veland. Veland to Lee. Lee neutral ice. Lee dumps in. Veland in the corner controls. Battles along the board, stolen by Central. Brown keeps it in. Brown shot. Saves Central. Central cover. Line change for the Wildcats. Neal, Boswick, Lang, Shulkin now on the ice. Wildcats control, Neal at point. Neal to Boswick, Boswick shot, save. Lang along the boards, Brown at point, Brown shot, glove save by Central. Same five for the Wildcats. Shulkin under center, wins the draw. Lang along the boards. Brown controls at the point, skates in. Brown skates in. Brown shot wide. Neal keeps it in. Neal controls it at the dot. Leaves it for Boswick. Neal at point. Neal skates in. Neal skates in. Shot. Neal. Save. Central clears the zone. Brown clears. Ahead to Shulkin. Central keeps it in. Central has the puck in front of the net. Couldn't get a shot off. Covered by Connor. Line change for the Wildcats. Nicholson, Miller, Frizy, Wernick, and Kaiser. Loose puck, Kaiser controls. Central dumps in. Frizy behind the net. Frizy leaves it for Miller. Miller. Nicholson controls. Nicholson skates in. 2-on-1. Nicholson shot. Saves Central. Wernick in the corner leaves it for Nicholson. Nicholson looks to center. Nicholson centers. Broken up Central. Miller keeps it in. Miller shot. Block save. Loose puck. Central covers. Same five for the Wildcats. Frizy controls, leaves it for Miller. Werner controls, ahead to Kaiser. Kaiser skates in. Kaiser looks to center. Kaiser in the center. Kaiser behind the boards. Kaiser stick handles. Reverses. Kaiser in the corner. Kaiser battling. Miller at point. Leaves it for Frizy. Offsides. Same 5 for the kids. Nicholson under center. Controls the draw. Frizy controls. Frizy dumps in. Nicholson pursues behind the net. Wernick along the board. Nicholson steals the puck. Shot. Saved by Central. Same 5 for the Wildcats. Kaiser under center, wins the draw. Nicholson controls. At point to Miller. Miller ahead to Nicholson. Nicholson reverses behind the net. Leaves it for Wernick. Wernick centering pass, no one home. Broken up by Central. Kaiser steals. Kaiser behind the net. Kaiser leaves it for Wernick. Wernick centers, just missed Nicholson. Frizy skates in. Frizy stick handling. Frizy shot wide. Wernick controls. Along the boards, battling. Leaves it, centering pass to Frizy. Broken up by Central. Loose puck along the boards. Battling along the boards. Puck squirts free. Kiss control. Miller center ice. Miller dumps in. Veland now on the ice for the Wildcats, along with Brown. Brown in pursuit. Frizy back on defense. Frizy breaks it up on the check. Nicholson controls. Cross ice broken up. Central in their own zone. Central control, skates in. Central pass, Central shot, broken up by Frizy. Save, counter. Penalty coming up. Wildcats to the power play. Veland, Lee, Alvarez, Brown, and Neal. Lee dumps it in. Kept in by Brown. Brown skates in at the dot. Brown stick handles. Shot. Save. Cover Central. Alvarez under center. Tied up. Neal at point. Neal cross ice to Brown. Brown back to Neal. Neal skates in. Neal shot. Save. Puck scored free. Central clears, end of the period. Nicholson, Wernick, Kaiser, Neal, and Brown to start the final third period of the regular season. Neal controls behind the net. Kaiser along the board. Kaiser cross pass to Wernick. Wernick dumps it in to Nicholson in the corner. Nicholson behind the net. Nicholson centering pass. Shot saved by Central. Same 5 for the Wildcats. Kaiser under center, leave it for Nicholson. Nicholson to Brown. Brown sends it into Wernick in the corner. Central clears the zone, no icing. Neal controls behind his net. Neal advances. Neal skates into the zone. Controls, stick handles. Neal looks to shoot, block, Central. Nicholson, shot, block. Central behind the net. Wernick on the forecheck. 15 seconds left on the power play. Nicholson controls center ice. Nicholson advances to Wernick. Wernick shot, block, save. Nicholson chops at it, no. Central now at full ice. Wernick center pass, shot, Kaiser save. Shot, save again, Central. Nicholson to Friese at point. Friese skates in, Friese shot, blocked by Central. Central controls. Friese keeps it in, Nicholson along the boards. Kept in by Miller. Miller dumps it back in. Miller keeps it in. Stolen by Wernick. Broken up again by Central. Central clears. Tries to control neutral ice. Pass ahead to Kaiser. Stolen by Central. Miller controls. Miller dumps in. Line change for the Wildcats. Boswick, Shulkin, and Lang now on for the Wildcats. Friese controls at point. Friese dumps to the corner. Central controls behind the net. Miller keeps it in. Friese keeps it in. Friese skates in. Friese shot. Save Central. Friese keeps it in. Friese at point. Cross ice to Miller. Miller skates in the circle. Miller shot. Block. Loose puck in front of the net. Central clears the zone. No icing. Friese controls his own zone. Pass ahead. The Boswick misses. Line change for the Wildcats. Neal and Brown now on the ice. Stolen by Shulkin. Kept in by Brown. Kaiser, Lee, and Vila now on the ice for the Wildcats. Alvarez. Alvarez controls, cross ice to Brown. Brown ahead to Velan. Broken up by Central. Velan on the forecheck. Central controls, cross ice. Brown controls neutral ice. Brown ahead to Alvarez. Alvarez dumps in. Central controls in the corner. Broken up by Lee. Alvarez keeps it in. Central clears the zone. Penalty coming up on the Wildcats. We We have interference on Alvarez. Coach Dell and the referee talking about for their plans after the game. Lee, Friese, Miller, and Kaiser on the ice for the Wildcats. Shot saved by Central. Central controls at point. Central shot, save, covered by Connor. .143 left on the Washington penalty. Kaiser under center. Miller controls. Miller clears the zone. Lee in pursuit. Central controls. Kaiser over to Friese. Friese clears the zone. Central controls their own zone. Cross ice broken up by Lee. Lee steals the puck. Kaiser comes in. Corner at the dot. Kaiser shot. Save Central. Nicholson and Wernick now on the ice for the Wildcats. 1:10 left on the penalty. Nicholson battles in the corner, steals the puck, skates in center to Wernick. Wernick shot, save Central. Central clears the zone. Friese controls along the boards. Cross ice to Miller. Miller jumps ahead. 45 from the penalty for the Wildcats. Central controls. Central advances, broken up by Miller. Central at point. Central shot, wide of the net. Friese looks to clear the zone. Nicholson in pursuit. Nicholson steals. Nicholson on a breakaway. Nicholson skates in. Shot. Save Central. Same four for the Wildcats. 14 seconds left on the Wildcat penalty. Central controls behind the net. Kept in by Brown. Central goes clear. Wernick along the boards. Wildcats now full strength. Shulkin on the ice. Loose puck, Central. Neutral ice. Wernick battling. Line change coming up. Crosswick and Lang now on the ice. Shot wide. Bostwick controls along the boards. Bostwick clears the zone. Bostwick dumps in. Shulkin on pursuit. Lang controls neutral ice. Lang dumps ahead. Central reverses. Dumps into the Wildcat zone. Brown controls. Brown looks. Bostwick along the boards. Stolen by Central. Shulkin battles. penalty coming up on Central. Brown, Neal, Kaiser, Nicholson, and Wernick. Watkins control the draw. Brown over Nicholson. Nicholson looks to Kaiser at point. Kaiser skates in, shot, save, cover, Central. Kaiser wins the draw. Nicholson controls, looks to center, looks, controls behind the net, looks for the open man, skates, finds Neal. Neal into the corner to Wernick. Wernick centering pass, misses Brown. Kaiser keeps it in. Kaiser dumps into Nicholson. Nicholson centering pass to Wernick. Wernick shot, save, Central. Neal keeps it in. Neutralize Kaiser. Cross ice to Brown. Brown advances, pass broken up. Kaiser to the corner. Behind the net. Kaiser reverses. Controls with the center. Controls. Finds Neal. Puck towards free. Neal controls center ice. Neal advances across the blue line. Neal skates in. Neal controls to the dot. Neal centering pass broken up. Nicholson controls up the circle. To Kaiser in the corner, centering pass to Brown. Brown at point, looks to control, shot, save, Central. Nicholson controls. Nicholson skates in at the dot. Nicholson pass to Wernick, just misses Wernick. Central clears the zone. 30 seconds left in the power play for the Wildcats. Brown ahead of Nicholson. Veland now on the ice. Nicholson dumps it in. Kaiser now on. Kaiser comes off the ice. Wernick now on. Miller controls. Miller races in. Alvarez at point. Stolen by Central. Veland along the boards. Alvarez controls. Cross ice to Frizy. Frizy over to Miller. Miller ahead to Veland. Veland centering to Alvarez. Alvarez crosses the blue line. Alvarez skates to the corner. Centering pass. Loose puck. Loose puck. Cover, Central. Alvarez under center, Lee and Veland at wing, Miller and Frizy in defense. Veland shot, saved and covered by Central. Alvarez under center wins the draw. Frizy controls over to Miller. Miller shot, redirected Veland behind the net. Central controls. Central advances. Clears their zone. Stolen by the Wildcats. Miller in his own zone. Ahead to Veland along the boards. Central steals. Central across the blue line, dumps in. Chases to the corner. Central behind the net. Center pass broken up. Lee along the boards. Lee clears the zone. Icing coming up on the Wildcats. Boswick playing Neal, Brown, and Shulkin. Boswick controls along the board, ahead to Shulkin. Neal clears the zone. Back to Neal. Neal to Shulkin. Shulkin to Boswick. Boswick races up, crosses the blue line, looks to center, offside. Same pocket walk to Shulkin under center. Brown controls. Brown crosses the blue line. Brown shot block. Boswick on the check, keeps it in. Boswick on the check again. Brown breaks up the pass, keeps it in. Puck squirts free, neutralized. Rockets control. Neal ahead to Lang. Lang dumps in, broken up central. Lang keeps it in again. Wernick pursues. No icing coming up. Nicholson and Kaiser now on the ice for the Wildcats. Central races through the neutral zone. Friday on the check, broken up. Wernick controls, finds Nicholson. Nicholson reverses along the circle, centering pass broken up. Central looks to clear, Friday keeps it in. Shot blocked, Central. Miller keeps it in. Wernick along the circle, reverses. Behind the net, over to Kaiser. Kaiser battles from the corner, controls. Looks to center, centering to Wernick. Shot broken up. Save, covered by Central. Same five for the Wildcats. Nicholson under center. Out of play. Same five for the Wildcats. Wildcats control. Kaiser shot off the post. Miller battles, keeps it in. Wernick controls. Puck squirts free. Central clears the zone. Icing coming up. Line change for the Wildcats. Nealon, Lee, and Alvarez now on the ice. Nealon, Brown at defense. Central races ahead, broken up by Lee. Nealon controls, leaves it for Lee, reverses. Neal controls, cross ice to Alvarez, broken up. Central ahead, loose puck in the corner, broken up by Lee. 10 seconds, Nealon in the corner. Central at the puck, shot, save, counter. Loose puck on ice. That's going to be a shutout for Connor tonight. We'll see everyone Thursday for the playoffs at West Meadows.